Have you ever tried to access an API only to be met with an authentication error? It's frustrating, right? If that's you, then you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into the AWS IAM authorization model in Amazon API Gateway and how to resolve those pesky authentication token issues. I totally get how annoying it is when you think everything is set up correctly, but you still hit a wall. You're not alone in this. Many developers face similar challenges when working with API Gateway and AWS IAM. Here's the specific situation we're looking at. A user recently asked, what does AWS IAM mean as an authorization model in Amazon API Gateway? They also mentioned that while their Lambda function works perfectly in the AWS console, accessing the endpoint URL results in a missing authentication token error. Sound familiar? Let's explore this together. So what does AWS IAM mean? It stands for Amazon Web Services Identity and Access Management. This model allows you to control access to your API using AWS credentials. However, if you're getting a missing authentication token error, it usually means that the request is not properly authenticated or the endpoint is incorrect. And don't go anywhere. I've got a crucial tip at the end that will help you avoid these authentication issues in the future. To understand the AWS IAM authorization model in Amazon API Gateway, the user should first know that it allows access control using AWS Identity and Access Management. This means that only authenticated users with the right permissions can access the API. Next, the user needs to ensure that their API gateway is configured to use AWS IAM. This involves setting the authorization type in the API settings to AWS IAM. After configuring the API, the user must create an IAM policy that grants the necessary permissions to access the API. This policy should be attached to the IAM user or role that will be making the requests. Now, to access the API, the user needs to sign their requests with AWS Signature version 4. This can be done using the AWS SDKs or by manually signing the requests. Finally, if the user encounters the missing authentication token error, it usually indicates that the request is not properly signed or the endpoint is incorrect. The user should double-check the endpoint URL and ensure the request is signed correctly. Did you know? The first API was created in the 2000s, and now they are the backbone of modern web applications. It's amazing how far we've come, but authentication issues can still trip us up. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach to obtaining an authentication token for cross-account permissions involves assuming a role. First, ensure you have a role to assume. You can follow a tutorial on how to do this. The command to assume a role looks like this: AWS STS assume role RN IAM 13456789112 role/example-role role-session name AWS CLI session. The response will include credentials such as secret access key, session token, and access key ID. Once you have these credentials, you can use them to send requests via Postman, ensuring you have the necessary authentication to access the API. Here's the crucial tip I promised. Always test your API endpoints with the correct authentication headers. This simple step can save you a lot of headaches down the line. And there you have it. You should now have a clearer understanding of AWS IAM and how to troubleshoot those authentication token issues. If you found this video helpful, hit the subscribe button for more tips, and don't miss our next video where we dive deeper into API Gateway best practices.